One of the toughest things we have to deal with as realtors is look a seller in the eye and tell them what we think their prices, their house is worth, right? And we go through the comps and we've gone through all of these dynamics. How do you, when faced with that same proposition, right? And we'll go away from the dynamics of a house sale for a moment. And let's say you're dealing with a divorce. Let's say, because now you're the authority, right? How do you deal with the psychology of that? Because every agent deals with it differently. In our world, I'd love to hear it from your side of the coin. How do you deal with it?
If we were talking about like a divorce situation when there's going to be two appraisers and they want you, your client wants you to be their advocate. I'm all in, except for it's my neck on the line at the end of the day. Like when there's a dispute in valuation, you got to be able to support your number. And so while your client has very strong opinions and you have to acknowledge that or recognize that, you got to be honest. You got to be true to yourself. You got to be able to support and believe in what, it doesn't do me any good on the back end for my client if I have to testify and I don't feel strongly about the number. And I'm hedging and I'm like, if I'm confident in my number, that's going to help you a lot better.
How do you look at that? If you were guiding an agent right now to look at the utility of land as part of the valuation?
A few different things come into play there. Appraisers give most value, like anyway, to the flat, the usable portion of a lot. The non-usable, the non-flat part is not a zero. It has some value. How do you evaluate that? It can be done in different ways. You can segregate them, adjust at a much lower component for the excess land, let's say. You can factor it into your adjustment on your usable basis and say, well, I'm also considering the non-usable land, but the adjustment's going to be made generally just on that flat portion.
When you're trying to educate to value, because that's one of the things that Rebingy does really, really well with those different attributes and the ability to say, I'll give you value for this. I can't give you a lot of value for that because it's already built into the comp sets that we're using, right? We're having a candid discussion. To what degree do you go through basically the same process of using attributes to try and educate a client to the reality of what their house is worth?
I try my best
Yeah.
because I like to speak to, you don't want to put somebody, you hate to say a negative thing about somebody's property. So that's why we have to look at several comparables. All the nitty gritty and even the stuff in Rebingy, you got to refine it to just like the most salient points.
You talk about, from your perspective, it's your neck on the line, right? Well, and you try to be objective. Well, we're highly subjective and we've got, at stake is getting the listing or not getting the listing and trying to walk that line. But at the end of the day, if we don't sell that listing, it's now an expired listing and we lose out. That's where our neck is on the line. And then it's reputation and credibility. Does that Siegel prices things 20% over the market? So the design of Rebingy is really to try and assist agents with giving them a platform to have candid conversations with the client about these are the things that an appraiser looks at in terms of defining value.
I think that's important because most likely the property is going to get appraised when you sell it and someone's in the loan. So it is good to kind of bring in that mindset that, hey, the appraiser is going to consider this. What I think is great about Rebingy is the way, and you can even just work with the clients. You do it without the refinements and it shows that number and then you start to adjust and you show them, hey, this property starts at 8, but you've got this, and takes you up to 8.7. Rebingy has brought in more of the appraisal aspect to the valuation as opposed to just price per square foot. I can show you appraisals where I've had ranges from $900 to $3,000 a square foot. It's like, pick a number. And when you're a real conforming neighborhood, then it's certainly something to look at. Condos, it's something to look at because the price per square foot of a real property of a house is influenced by the value of the land. So that's why it's a misleading tool to look at because the land is contributing to the overall value of the property.
Well, Craig, this has been fantastic. So I appreciate everything you've done for the evolution of Rebingy and making that the best product can be, but also just to being truly a stand-up guy and an expert at what you do. So I thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Hopefully you've all gotten value out of this. More of these to come. Use this Rebingy feature. It's critical to not only building rapport, but the education process of developing really a partnership with your client and discovering what is the value of their home together so that you then can ideally work with that client and create more opportunities for yourself. So thanks for tuning in.